All right. Okay, we're now recording. So, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for joining our National Online Pride event for 2026 InFocus Queer and Disabled. My name is Margie McCumsty. My pronouns are she, her. This event is hosted by People with Disability Australia, or PWDA for short. PWDA is a national peak disability rights and advocacy organisation made up of and led by people with disability. We have a cross-disability focus, which means we represent the interests of people with all kinds of disability. I'm coming to you today from Naarm. I'm normally on Wonnarua country, but I've travelled to Naarm this morning, so I'm on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country, and I acknowledge its elders. So, a little about me. My name's Margie McCumsty, and I am a middle-aged woman with fair skin and long, blonde, brownie-coloured, wavy, curly hair. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and navy glasses. Each speaker today is a PWDA member, and I thank them all for being a part of this event and for their continued leadership in creating change by and for our community. I also thank our audience for being here. It's wonderful to have so many of our members and community here with us today. I would now like to hand over to PWDA member Uncle Paul Constable Calcott to conduct an acknowledgement of country. Following the acknowledgement of country, we will go through the event's accessibility and engagement. Thank you, Uncle Paul.
Thank you, Maggie. I've got my speaker on. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Uncle Paul. I'm just going to apologise to the interpreters because I'm going to do an acknowledgement in language. And I like to do this because it represents the language of my father's people, and language is very important in our community because it's how we connect sentences and use phrases. I do want to point out that recently someone said to me, well, how come you have so many languages? You weren't really connected. Like you have all these different languages through this country, but you classify as one people. But the thing is, in a country this size, it's not uncommon. Why would it be surprising to have multiple languages? If you travel through Europe, you can travel through multiple countries between the time it takes from, the same distance as it takes from me to get to Sydney, and all of those speak different languages, but they're all together as Europeans. So in our community, we had different languages, but quite often too, we had interpreters who could speak multiple languages, and they were our translators when you travelled country or conducted business. So my language is Wiradjuri, so I'm just going to quickly say, introduce myself and say hello. So Yamadumaran, Yuanara, Mamba Nurampo, Diramadilia, Bardi Wiradjuri, Winya, Gabi Gabi Jinabara Nurambang, Yamara to Gabi Gabi Jinabara Nurambang. So virtually, I just said, I'm a Muyalong. So I just virtually said, hi everyone, hope you're well. My name is Uncle Paul. I'm a proud Wiradjuri man, now living on Gubbi Gubbi Jinabara country here on the Sunshine Coast. And I would pay my respects to sit quietly and to listen and learn from the elders of the country here. And little note seeing we're talking about LGBTQ plus information today. The term I use for elder Muyalong is the elders that supported and taught the young men. So it doesn't necessarily, for me, mean that those elders are male, because culturally, leadership has no gender. And I was taught by the women. So to me, my elders, I use that term to respectfully acknowledge the elders that taught me as I grew up. So, and I just want to also touch today, doing an acknowledgement is just identifying the incredible rich culture and the communities that we're all on. As I said, I'm Wiradjuri, but I'm on Gubbi Gubbi Jinabara country. And the beautiful stories that connect to the land here in the saltwater dreaming are beautiful stories. And to share those stories does not take away anybody else's ability to live here or their identity. It's just sharing the beautiful stories of this country that we all now live on. And I also want to just quickly share something in regards to the LGBTQ plus philosophy, as that's what we're talking about today. Many First Nations cultures have stories of up to 7 gender identities. In Australia, here in our community of First Nations people, there are stories of multiple genders as well. And quite often, the only reason that we would reduce to 2 genders, or disability was even seen as a deficit, was the introduction of European philosophies and perspectives and that. So, in Western philosophies and perspectives. So there were studies done recently, earlier this century, around Western Australia, where they were talking to a lot of traditional owners and communities. And all the reports back pretty much showed that being part of the LGBTQ plus community was just part of the diversity of that community. There was nothing wrong with it. There was nothing bad about it. It was just part of the rich diversity. And even when you look back, there are no bad dreaming stories about the LGBTQ plus community, which shows that it was just part of who we are. And I like to use the term many spirits. I take it from working with Canadian LGBTQ plus community, where they had the term of two spirits, which showed people having multiple genders. And their role was often as mediators, because having multiple genders, you were seen as being able to see perspectives from other people's points of view, and not just one side of it. But I use the term many spirits because for me, having a disability and our disabilities are very much part of our spirituality. So within us, we have all these multiple spiritualities, our disabilities, our gender, our sexuality, is all those things. And they don't always match the body we've been given to express that. So have to follow the spirit, what's internal, and that has to shine through. So if it doesn't match outside, it's not important. It's the spirituality inside that's important. So thanks everyone. I look forward to yarning today, and thank you again, PWD, for the opportunity to always provide really meaningful acknowledgement to countries and have this chance to share some stories with you.
Tracy speaking. Thank you, Uncle Paul, for that acknowledgement of country. For those that don't know me, my name is Tracy Junghans, and I'm the Marketing and Engagement Specialist at PWDA. I'm joining today's event from Gadigal Lands, and it's great to welcome so many of our members and community here. For an image description, I'm a middle-aged, light-skinned woman with medium-length blonde, like Margie, brownish hair, and I've got lots of freckles. And today I'm wearing a black t-shirt and have a virtual background on which shows a plant and the PWDA logo. I will now go through our event's housekeeping and share some information so you know how we'll be running the event and how to use the different Zoom functions and to get technical help if you need it. We have 2 Auslan interpreters and a captioner at the meeting. You'll be able to see the interpreters on the screen during the meeting, and they will swap about every 10 to 15 minutes. If you would like to see the captions, press the Close Captions button, which is in your menu, and it has an icon with CC on it. We will keep everyone's microphones turned off to help us run the event without lots of background noise. We'd like to thank everyone who submitted questions for our speakers, and we have used these questions to develop the program today. Due to time restraints, we will not be taking live questions from the audience. We do, however, encourage everyone to use the chat box to share comments and connect. The chat box will be monitored by the PWDA team to ensure this remains a safe space for everyone. If you do need help during the session, you can message the staff names called technical support in the chat box. You can also contact PWDA staff by emailing pwd@pwd.org.au or by calling or texting 0490 839 986 or 0492 847 551. These will be posted up into the chat now as well. Before I pass back to Margie to start the official agenda of the event, would love to know a little more about who you are and who's here with us today. We're going to launch a poll which has a few questions on it, and you can answer as much or as little as you like. The poll should be appearing on your screens now. The 3 questions are, what state are you joining from today? The next one is, do you identify as a person with disability? And are you a member of PWDA? We'll just give it a few minutes, a minute or so for everyone to answer. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now and we'll have a look at those results. Thank you for everyone that answered that. It looks like we've got 33% of people from New South Wales. Next up, Victoria with 28% in there. 68% of people identify as a person with disability. And 29 are members. Thank you for everyone who completed that poll. If you are interested in being a member of PWDA, you can become a member and join us in promoting the human rights, equality and dignity of all people with disability in Australia. It's free to join and it's a great way to connect with other people with disability and influence our work. We'll be posting up a link to our membership form now in the chat. Finally, thank you for your patience during the event. There may be some delays while we move between speakers and sessions, and we thank you for your patience. Throughout the event, you may also hear the voice of PWDA team member Anastasia, who may from time to time communicate with our facilitators about time or contributions from attendees. This is what Anastasia's voice sounds like.
I am Anastasia, and this is my voice.
The event is scheduled for 2 hours, and we will be taking a 5-minute break halfway through. But please feel free to take any time away at any point if you need it. Thank you again for joining us. I'll now pass back to Margie.
Thank you so much. This is Margie speaking. So, PWDA's InFocus, Queer and Disabled. I've been reflecting on what it means to be in focus, especially in this last 48 hours and in preparing for today's event. And I think, it's so important for us to gather together to have our voices be heard, to focus on our needs at the intersection of being queer and disabled. Now, I'm a proud intersex woman. I'm the I in the LGBTQIA+ acronym. But being intersex is not my disability. Intersex isn't a disability, and not all intersex people are queer. I'm pansexual and I'm good with it, but there are many people who are intersex who are also heterosexual. So even though we're part of the queer acronym, not all of us find that word really reflects who we are. So I think that's important to highlight. But I'm also a person with lived experience of a disability. I have autism and ADHD and medical trauma that goes along with being intersex. So I think it is important that where the intersection meets, that our voices are heard and that we shine a light on our needs and allow people to be able to focus on that. So I reflected, as I said, about what it means to be in focus. And at this stage in our world's history, it can feel like quite a dark time, especially if we look at what's going on in America. But then there's plenty of things happening in Australia as well with the rise of the far right. Aristotle once said, "It's during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light." And I think that in sharing our light, in sharing our experiences, our lived realities, and our needs, we shine a light on our community. We shine a light in the darkness. And David Dinatara said, "Our focus is our future." And it makes sense that what you focus on is what you're going to create, what's going to happen. So, as I said, I've been reflecting in this last 48 hours. And I say the last 48 hours because the last 48 hours have been pretty difficult for me. My mother-in-law died this morning at 1 a.m. And being in focus as we sat by her bedside in these last days allowed us to be present. And our most precious moments happened where there was authenticity, where we could speak about what was in our hearts, what was in our minds. We could share our experiences with her. We could share with her what she means to us. We could share with love and heart and passion and share about how much we're going to miss her. Tell her what she meant and will always mean to us. So that authenticity and presence that comes from focus was important. So that was at 1 a.m. this morning. And so if I look a bit tired, I should have said in my visual description, I have some bags under my eyes. That's why. But I also said that I've travelled from the Hunter Valley region today to come down to Naarm. And the reason I've done that is because after years of focused advocacy and efforts to progress the human rights of people with innate variations of sex characteristics, Victoria is hopefully about to bring into legislation protections for children and babies with innate variations, with intersex variations. It's being discussed and argued in Parliament this evening, and tomorrow, hopefully, it will all go through. Now, this is decades of advocacy, decades of focused effort. And so when we say our focus is our future, it's about the focus that we place on the things that are important to us. It's about having our voices count, even in the darkness. If we had given up over those decades of advocacy because nobody was listening and nobody cared, then we wouldn't be having the results we're hopefully going to have tomorrow. So focus forms our future and it fuels our purpose. And by staying present, listening, and being authentic, we can express what we want to achieve. When we can create a better world for all, a world of light and a world of love. I'd now like to introduce PWDA's Vice President, Jared Sandel-Hay. Jared is an elected director of PWDA and a proud queer disabled man with over 15 years' experience in disability advocacy and systemic reform. I suspect that Jared knows quite a lot about remaining focused in dark times. Jared is passionate about disability pride, self-determination, and ensuring disabled people lead inclusive, rights-based change at a national level. Please welcome Jared for their welcoming address.
Thank you, Maggie. Great to have you here, and on behalf of PWDA, let me extend our condolences to you and your family, and commend you on your leadership in not only still showing up today, which we would all understand if you were not up for, but also your leadership in the work you're doing in Victoria today, and congratulations on your efforts. You have been a part of what tomorrow will bring, and the community and PWDA are very proud of that. Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Jared Sandway, and I am your favorite bisexual. A little bit about what I'm wearing and what I look like. I have a maroon hat and a maroon t-shirt. I have dark glasses and I have a beard. And have a microphone in front of my face. Um, I'm also joining you from Nam, in the lands of the Wurundjeri people. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and remind everyone that this is always was and always will be Aboriginal land. It is a privilege to welcome you to InFocus Queer and Disabled. We know our community, just like Marty has spoken about earlier, our community is not homogeneous. That means we are not all the same in who we are, what we want, or what we think. Our disabled identity intersects with other parts of who we are, including our sexuality and gender. When we say intersects, we mean these parts of who we are overlap and shape our experiences at the same time. They are not separate. They influence how we move through the world. For queer people with disability, those intersecting identities can mean additional barriers, additional discrimination, and additional exclusion. That reality structural. I also think it's cultural as well. It is built into systems, and it is something we are committed to addressing as a movement. At PWDA, we center the voices of people with disabilities in our policy and advocacy work. Disabled people's experience is not an afterthought. Our voices are PWDA's expertise. Our voices are PWDA's power. I'm going off script here, but I always think that while I'm the vice president of PWDA, I don't work for you, but I learn from you. And I am just a channel for your advocacy. PWDA creates spaces like this so our community can connect, share our stories, we change together. Nothing about us without us. InFocus is more than just a theme. It is a statement. It is about moving from the margins to the center. It's about being seen fully as a queer disabled people without having to separate the parts of ourselves. Growing up, I was either seen as disabled or as bisexual, but never both. It is about queer and disabled joy. And it's about pride and dignity. I am proud that the team are holding this space today. Proud that we are making room for stories to be shared in people's own words, in their own ways. Proud that we are building a community that refuses to be sidelined and erased. Today is an opportunity to reflect on what needs to change, to recognize the work that is already happening, and to strengthen our collective voice. Most importantly, though, this is an opportunity for connection, to see one another, to hear one another, and to remember that we are not alone. We are here, we are queer, we are disabled, and we are in focus. Thank you so much for being a part of this community and this movement. I'll hand you back to Margie.
Thanks so much, Jared. You are indeed my new favourite bisexual. I didn't know I needed a favourite bisexual, but I now have one. So thank you for that. And I also want to thank you for highlighting the additional barriers, discrimination, and exclusion that comes with intersectionality, and the focus that comes from centering disabled voices and being a channel for informed advocacy. And it's also that focus that you talked about in terms of connection and creating queer and disabled joy, pride, and dignity. Thought that was awesome. So thank you so much, Jared. Very wise words indeed from my favourite bisexual. And I'd now like to introduce PWDA's LGBTQIA plus project lead, and that's Bobby Trower. Bobby has been leading PWDA's advocacy and representative work with and for LGBTQIA plus people with disability, ensuring that our LGBTQIA plus voices are heard and inform policies about us. So, Bobby, we'll just check that you're all. I can see you, but can we hear you? Let's just check that
Hopefully we can.
we
Good
can. We can
afternoon.
hear you. So, hand it
Marvelous.
over to Bobby. Thank you so much, Bobby.
Much appreciated, Mikey. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Bobby Trower. My pronouns are they, them. As Mikey mentioned, I'm the LGBTIQ project lead here at PWDA, and I'm joining from a very windy and very hot Darugland today. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country after I give you a visual description of myself. If you haven't met me or had a visual description before, I have light pale skin, I have blondish hair, which I'm calling a professional mullet. I'm wearing glasses today and a cream Keith Haring shirt, which I thought was very appropriate for proceedings. I also have, I'm nursing a green bandage on my very tattooed arm, and I'm expecting the Queer Community Award for rescuing a small toy poodle off the highway last night, and my present from it was a small bite to the hand, but Cookie got home okay in time for Lunar New Year, so after being on the run for 5 hours, I'm glad to have been able to help. Thanks, everyone. It's a good start. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of country. PWDA acknowledges that many lands everyone is joining from today, including the Darug people, where I am, and the Gadigal people, where the technical team are. And we pay respects to the unceded lands, people, elders past and present. And thank you so much to Uncle Paul for the amazing welcome this morning. We extend the respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining the session. And it's really key to remember as we're speaking through some of my session, which is on data, that First Nations queer, trans, sister girl and brother boy communities have always been part of this land's history and resistance long before the first Mardi Gras and long before colonial records even acknowledged our existence. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And you will see on the screen, and I'll describe, PWDA commissioned some artwork by Paul Constable Colcott, Wiradjuri Elder, and PWDA member, which is also on the screen right now. So before I launch into a very exciting part of statistic analysis, I do want to use this time to speak very honestly and share some insights to the data that I'm able to share with you today. I want to be really clear about the barriers that LGBTIQ people with disability are experiencing and why those barriers exist, and also what needs to change. This presentation isn't about queer disabled people and their vulnerability. It's a presentation about the systems that exist and the nearly 1,000 people who shared really, really intricate storytelling of their experiences as LGBTIQ people with disability. If you have any questions at this point, please pop them in the chat and I'll try to get to them as I go along. Otherwise, I'll try and address any that pop in the chat as I go. But I'm going to give you some summary information right now about the survey itself that PWDA created with LGBTIQ people with disability. So as I said, nearly 1,000 people, so 967 people shared their experiences. And there was a huge diversity in that. As an example, around 78 different gender expressions, which was incredible to see and phenomenal to recognize. The survey ran from April to September. There was also an easy read version made together with Inclusion Australia, and 82 people completed the easy read version. This is a really significant moment for PWDA to bring this data into focus. There's not just one story, there's 967 stories that compounded across around 8 different areas in our lives that gave us a better insight and a way to articulate how we can bring together people's stories. As Jared mentioned at the beginning, no one person's journey or needs or wants are the same. But for many of you here, the data that I'm about to share will not be surprising. You're living it every day. What the survey does is hopefully going to give you an understanding of what you may feel to be personal is actually structured and systemic. And that's something that we can work towards together. If I can pop this onto the next slide. So first up, we had a pretty strong indicator with 65% of people who filled in a survey reporting that they had experienced discrimination. This is nearly 2/3 of LGBTIQ people with disability experiencing discrimination. And to really sit with this number is something that I've done since the survey data has come through. Not because of one identity or the other, but because both together, being an LGBTIQ person with disability, the discrimination isn't just occasional, it's expected, it's anticipated. And a lot of that anticipatory stress is something that a lot of people articulated in their journeys through the medical health system, in their lives at work, and other areas that we included in focus. You can pop onto the next slide, please. Another high figure, again, 2/3 of people were not believed about their gender or sexuality when interacting with different systems. One of the most consistent themes was this disbelief around gender identity and confusion, your sexuality is a phase, or that your disability could be the reason that you're queer, or it might be a reason not to transition if you're trans or gender diverse. There's lots of things that sit around that. But when people aren't believed about who they are, everything becomes a lot harder. Healthcare becomes unsafe, support services become conditional, and the trust erodes. Or like me, if you get an Uber Eats delivery with a non-legal name, you may encounter some frustration in getting your zeros delivered. Belief is really foundational across the board, and this is something that came through really strongly in the survey. Head to the next slide. One of the areas that we took a deep dive into, and something that People with Disability Australia and Inclusive Rainbow Voices and the Centre for Family Bonds are also working together on through a project funded by the NIB Foundation on LGBTIQ and disability practice guidelines for the healthcare sector. But this is one of the areas that was one of the highest, where 72% of people who answered the survey experienced discrimination or assumptions in healthcare. Many of the respondents talked about assumptions, dismissal, or just outright discrimination, being spoken over, being misgendered, or being treated as being incapable of knowing your own body, even though you know the best. Some of this crosses over into general healthcare experiences, but there were so many examples where someone's sexuality and their disability came together to basically create an experience that hasn't been a very pleasant one. And this has been an overwhelming response. And I know I'm preaching to the choir in this regard, as many of you all have your own experiences of discrimination or assumptions that have been made in healthcare. It affects everybody, and anyone, whether you seek care or not, could affect you, or it could affect any of your loved ones that are also trying to seek care for you. You can pop up to the next slide, please. One of the key areas, the key themes that came through is that our identities intersect. Both Jared and Margie and Paul have mentioned this so far. They overlap and shape our experiences at the same time. We don't experience disability separate from our gender. We don't experience our sexuality separate from our class, or a religion we may have, or a race that we belong to. And we don't experience culture separately from disability either. All these parts coexist and they exist together. But systems are developed in isolation of understanding those intersecting identities. They're often built to respond to one thing at a time. Oh, you're LGBTIQ or you're disabled, and these are separate. But this gap creates the real harm. We can pop to the next slide. We're now going to listen to a quote from one of the respondents, which we're going to play aloud.
My health concerns and disabilities are often blamed on my gender, sexuality, and intersex status. I'm further scrutinised in public, from shopping, education, events, for not only being visibly disabled, but for not looking like a cisgender, heterosexual male.
So I'm going to share the next quote in this series now. Thank you.
People have tried to tell me I only think I am trans because I am autistic, and they think autistic people are incapable of understanding themselves. Misconceptions such as these make it difficult for me to be accepted and understood.
And they're just two examples of some of our survey respondents from thousands of different types of responses to questions that really solidified their experiences of being LGBTIQ disability. One area that we're looking at, that we looked at in the survey, is around economic exclusion and understanding that it compounds everything. 68% of people had experienced workplace discrimination. Some of that was from being an LGBTIQ person. Some of that was because they were a person with disability. And there were lots and lots of examples where those two things came together and interacted. Workplace discrimination this high is absolutely unwarranted. Income insecurity was also high. And there were so many stories, and as I'm sure you'll connect with, around people making choices between their own health needs and their own living needs. And lots of people making choices that were really difficult to make in those scenarios. So that led on, there was a domino effect. There were concerns about aging in place around that, around housing into the future, and around what long-term support looks like, and lots and lots and lots of reflections on the NDIS. When you're financially insecure, it's harder to leave unsafe spaces. It's harder to access affirming healthcare, and it's harder to challenge discrimination. Inclusion without economic justice is really fragile. And one story that kept coming through time after time was that the community continues to turn up for itself. So, for example, gender diverse people who may be fundraising for gender realignment surgery. This tends to be supported by, organized by and joined in by and shared by other LGBTIQ people. And LGBTIQ people with disability reflected a lot on the high costs that are related and associated with being trans or gender diverse. And this came through a lot. We can head on to the next slide. Belonging is not guaranteed. Many people felt unsafe and excluded in both queer and disability spaces. And again, this is something everyone on the call will understand all too well. But you're too disabled for queer spaces and you're too queer for disability spaces. And then you're kind of left in a space that doesn't exist. When we have community, it protects us, but it can also exclude us or make us feel more excluded knowing that. And this tells us something, and it means that inclusion has to be intentional. Next slide, please. Here's some more examples of what we actually heard from our community.
For many people, their LGBTIQA+ identity feeling overtaken by the disability needs. We heard, for me, the disability just overwhelms the queerness. It doesn't get to be expressed or shown because my disability needs are so large. I'm trying to fix that now, but the queerness is more optional, whereas my disability affects every second of every day. So the queerness just gets ignored. I hate it.
I want to pause here and ask a question to everybody on the call. And this is something that we asked in the survey. If one thing could change tomorrow for you as an LGBTIQ person with disability, what would make the biggest difference in your life? Not in theory, not just in the policy language, but for your actual life. Would it be healthcare? Would it be around income, housing, safety, belonging, or something else entirely? You can give me something left field if you wish. Please feel free to share a word or a phrase or a sentence or a GIF. I'm partial to a GIF, if that's how you say it. Please share that in the chat now. I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. I can see a number of things coming through in the chat already. And I'm not going to be able to read them all out, but I'll give it a good go to summarize some themes. It seems, unconditional acceptance is one of the things that is a real foundational piece of what people are talking about. And thank you for Lindsay for articulating it so well. There's a combination of different things that financial security and home ownership and housing is all interlinked, along with living independently. They're all linked too. Safe spaces for neurodivergent people is definitely something that will be going into the healthcare guidelines, I can tell you that now. And feeling safe, such a key part of being able to enter a space, not being on the defensive or on the back foot, expecting discrimination or expecting someone to not accept you. Look, if we had a canon, there's probably a queue, and anyone on that list is probably in line to go in the canon. Sadly, PWDA budget doesn't extend to canons, but a metaphorical canon in the shape of very well-worded emails to our members of parliament and representatives is something I can offer. So we're going to collate this list. Thank you, everyone, for being able to share what you can so far. Compulsory intersectionality training for everyone. Here. Please feel free to keep going in the chat. I do have a limited time and I've got so much more to tell you. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So Now that I've given a very small snapshot to a lot of data, it brings us to a point where we need to really question what needs to change. Canon withheld. There are many, many things that we are working on currently, but many, many more things that we need to continue to advocate on together. Really, it's not about being able to question whether the barriers exist. We know that. We live that every day. The barriers do exist, and lots of those we can change incrementally and change over time. Intersectionality training for all would be a good example. But there are other areas that we can change that can make a difference very quickly in the lives of LGBTIQ people with disabilities. And it's about shifting those barriers. And I want to name 5 areas that have really shone in the survey in terms of what we can do to advocate together. So I'm going to start with the first, which is slide. Believe us. This one feels simple. It is simple. It's simple to say, harder to do. Believe us. We know that change begins with belief. When we say we are who we are, respect that. It's got to be embedded in policy, training, service design, and the law. It's not just about dignity. It's not just about respect. It's about seeing us as whole people. And on to the next slide. The second thing that we really need to do is design for this intersection. We have so little available out there that really looks at LGBTIQ people with disability and what systems and structures need to change and be refined in order for the intersection to be designed for. Policies can't treat disability, sexuality, and gender as really separate categories. We cannot continue in 2026 that way. Service design and the experiences that you have, whatever system you're engaging with, should reflect how we actually live. This means inclusive intake forms, intersectionality training for all. It means integrated supports. It means cross-sector accountability. And it must mean other organisations working in the disability or the LGBTIQ space is coming together and being shoulder to shoulder so that we are very clear on having a new bar to be working up from. Intersection and design for that intersection, particularly for LGBTIQ people with disabilities, has got to be moving from theory to practice. And I know a lot of people on the call today have been their whole careers and their whole lives really pushing for this thing, for designing for that intersection. Next slide, please. The third thing that we have is economic security is inclusion. Economic security is such a foundational piece of how housing, income, work all come together. 3 major areas of our lives that we live. These aren't just side issues, they are integrated, connected, and they are often, when lost together. They determine whether someone can live safely or can be their authentic selves or get the support that they need and deserve. Economic security and economic justice is ultimately queer disability justice. Next slide, please. Last 2 areas that I'd like to focus on. First one seems very obvious, but something that simply isn't seen. For example, funding peer leadership. Peer leadership is such a critical part of this puzzle. Everyone on this call has something really critical to add to the systems that need to change. These community-led spaces, they reduce isolation, and that's a story we kept seeing, a narrative we kept seeing through all the stories shared with us. Peer leadership builds confidence. If you see someone, but one area that people were saying is particularly rare conditions or medical conditions that not many people have, being able to see someone or be connected to their Instagram story or see them thriving in ways that you want to also had a massive effect on mental health, optimism, and a brighter outlook for the future. So funding peer leadership is a critical part of this puzzle. Part of that is peak body funding. Part of it is about building capacity of community organisations to step into that space in the national area. It's working with organisations like Inclusive Rainbow Voices, who really brought together an incredible amount of people, and I'm sure there's some people on the call that are heavily involved with that. What we saw in the data was about how important online spaces that have been cultivated by people day in, day out, online and in person across Australia, create safety. Representation creates safety, it hedges safety. And not only is this about relying on goodwill, it's about getting paid for doing the work. And I know this won't fall on anyone in an odd way on the call right now. This requires investment. It requires vision and leadership, and it requires governments to be able to say, this is important to us, and here are the dollars to back up what we say. Again, nothing about us without us. This brings me to my last slide of this area. And this is the fifth area, which is about visibility must lead to power. Visibility is so important, and visibility without structural change becomes tokenistic. This is about pride translating into policy reform, into funding shifts, into accountability. This is about being able to go into the bank or going to a hospital, go to your GP and getting the same amazing service because you're queer and not in spite of it. This is about being seen, but in a way that is transformative. Being seen is just step one. Being heard and being resourced for others to hear you is that next step that we really want to push governments into. And I'll leave you with a closing quote that we had from one of the respondents.
The hardest part of having both these identities is that the world wants to make you feel double broken. Even though these two identities make me double unique, and it's in my uniqueness that I have my power.
This was one of my favorite quotes from the survey itself. It really spoke to what the data suggested. We are not double broken. We're not there to be sidelined. We have insights that are critical to multiply resilience, to multiply that power, and really shift where we're at in 2026. Thank you, everybody. Just to summarize, I saw some questions pop up in the chat. We do have this data synthesized, and it isn't able to be shared in a format. Unfortunately, it's not ready yet. It could possibly give our detractors something more to work with, but we do have information available, and we hope to be able to give you a better insight into all the data collected. And if anybody filled in the survey on this call, I just want to thank you personally. I've read through every single response that I've been able to read through, and it's been a phenomenal insight into areas that have long gone unnoticed and unfunded and unseen. And so thank you for anyone that took the time to complete the survey. I really do thank you from the bottom of your heart. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to pop off camera here, but I am going to be on the call for the rest of this session, and I really look forward to other people's insights. Thank you for having me and my poorly finger today. Thanks, Maggie. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Bobby. That was great and such powerful work that's been done. We're going to have a little break now, and we are running a little bit late, but we will return back at 2 p.m. So if you can all come back then, that would be great. So time to grab a drink, pop to the loo, grab that last slice of pizza, whatever you need to do, and we'll be back to talk some more. And just remember in that 5 minutes, reflect on it. We're not double broken, we're double unique. We'll see you soon.
That is 5 minutes for anyone not on Sydney or AEDT time.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. It's Margie here, Margie Makumsky speaking. Just welcome back, everybody. I forgot to mention earlier who I am. I was so busy telling you about what's going on in my life. I'm the Training and Communications Coordinator for Interaction for Health and Human Rights, and I'm just popping my details into the chat if anybody would like to get in contact with me. So we're now commencing the second part of the program, InFocus Queer and Disabled Storytelling. And in this session, we will hear directly from 6 of our members, Jax Brown, Jenna Hope, Jeremy Hope, Uncle Paul Constable Calcott, and Shannon Milak, and also Dane Noonan. Starting off the session is Jax Brown. Jax Brown is an esteemed disability and LGBTQIA+ rights activist, writer, and educator. His tireless commitment to LGBTQIA+ disability human rights and advocacy has been recognised with a Medal of the Order of Australia. Is this where I bow? I think it might be. Jax utilises their experience as a queer, trans, and wheelchair user to explore intersectional identities. They view disability as a socio-political issue of intersectional equality, access, and human rights. Now, Jax was the previous co-chair of Inclusive Rainbow Voices, a human rights organisation for LGBTIQA+ people with disabilities. And Jax has also served on the Victorian Disability Advisory Council, Victorian Government's LGBTI Task Force Health and Human Services Working Group, and the Victorian Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission's Disability Reference Group. His work has been published widely online and in several anthologies, including Queer Disability Anthology, Queer Stories, Reflections on Lives Well Lived from some of Australia's finest LGBTQIA+ writers, Kindred, 12 Queer #LoveAusya Stories, Growing Up Queer in Australia, and We've Got This, Stories by Disabled Parents. Jax runs his own business in LGBTIQA+ disability rights and inclusion, where they provide sought-after guest speaking, education workshops, and training for community members and allies. When not being earnest about social change, he can be found reading memoirs and drinking tea, doing daggy craft, and wearing a sprinkling of rainbow at all times. Over to you, Jax.
Thank you. And when I sent across that lengthy bio, I did say they could pare it down somewhat. So thanks for plowing through that, Margie. And yeah, I'd like to
It
join.
was too fabulous to pare down, Jax. Needed to be in full.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I'd just like to send my condolences to you and your family, and thanks so much for being here with us today, and for all the tireless advocacy that you do for intersex human rights. And let's hope we see some much needed change in Victoria tomorrow. We've all got our fingers and toes and everything crossed, but thanks again. It's a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. I've been a member of PWDA for a very, very long time, and I love this organization and the work that you do. And I've been working across LGBTIQA+ and disability rights for 15 years now. So a long, long time doing this work. And it's always a pleasure to be part of a panel where we hear from people with lived experience. I want to begin though by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people on whose land I am this afternoon, and pay my deep respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. This land was never ceded, and the process of colonization, occupation, incarceration, and genocide that began over 2 centuries ago continues to today. In the face of this, however, I really want to recognize the strength, resilience, and pride of the First Nations people of this land. And I'd like to acknowledge any First Nations people who are joining us, including brother boys and sister girls and other Rainbow Mob. Thank you for your tireless work and your ongoing truth telling in the face of entrenched racism in so-called Australia. So a visual description of me: I'm a white person with short dark hair and glasses, a beard, and a shirt with colourful frogs on it. I'm seated in my manual wheelchair, and I've got some Pride posters behind me and some drawings in the background as well. Look, I really love that today's event uses both queer and disabled in the title, as these are really, really important terms for me. They're political words, they're reclaimed words, they're words that hold political movements within them, and they speak to our fight for our human rights and our collective power as queer disabled people. Queer and disabled are words that connect me to those who have come before me. And I'm building on a legacy of bold and proud disability activists and advocates who've taught me to be unapologetically proud of who I am. Queer holds a history of activism and resistance, as does the word disabled. Disabled, as I'm sure many of you know, comes from the social model of disability. And the social model was truly transformative for me as a young person when I first encountered it. I was living at the time in a small country town in regional New South Wales where many of the shops were heritage listed, preserving a colonialist heritage and a time when disabled people were locked up in large scale institutions. And the social model really allowed me to understand that the barriers that I was encountering as a wheelchair user were not my fault, and I was not the problem. As UK disability activist Liz Crow says, for years now, the social model of disability has enabled me to confront, survive, and even surmount countless situations of exclusion and discrimination. It has enabled a version of ourselves free from the constraints of disability oppression and provided a direction for our commitment to social change. It has played a central role in promoting disabled people's individual self-worth, collective identity, and political organisation. And I really love that quote, and I come back to it time and time again across my life because it really rings true to me. So often, as queer disabled people, we are told to squish our true selves down, to try and conform to normative standards. And I really want us to push back against that impulse and to lean into our collective queer crip power. This is anti-ableist work. And we're building on a legacy of bold and proud queer disability activists and advocates who ask us not to conform, to not be quiet while queer disabled people continue to be discriminated against, abused, violated, stigmatized, denied access to the NDIS, or underfunded or kicked off the scheme that we've fought so very hard for. Now we must come together and fight like our lives depend on it, because they do. We, as queer disabled people and the disability community more broadly, are strong and resilient because we've had to be. We will speak truth to power and we will not be silenced. I sit here today as a proud disabled person and a proud transgender person. While trans human rights are under attack in the US and elsewhere overseas, as well as in this country, where access to life-saving, gender-affirming healthcare is being denied to young trans people in Queensland. And I think about the intersections of my own fight for gender affirmation and the many health professionals who are outright ableist towards me. And I think of trans and gender diverse people with intellectual disabilities who face even more ableism than me. We are here today because we know we are living in a very important moment in transgender and disability history. In a time when our NDIS is undergoing sweeping changes which are impacting all our lives. My plan is up for review in the next couple of months, and I'm really, really fearful, as I know many of us are, about what will happen when I go to that planning meeting. So for starters, my LAC, my local area coordinator, keeps misgendering me in his correspondence with me. This is despite me having sent across all relevant legal paperwork to get my gender updated in the system and telling him what my pronouns are repeatedly. And even though he continues to misgender me, he promises me a welcoming and inclusive meeting. And I don't even know how that's possible, how he can provide that or even think that he can when he can't even get my pronouns right. And I keep wondering what it would be like to be able to request an LAC who shared my intersectionality, someone who I didn't have to educate, someone who viewed me as a whole and complex human being with human rights, which deserve to be upheld and treated with dignity and respect. To exist in this body, in this moment in time, is powerful. And it requires me to actively practice my queer, disabled, trans pride every single day. And I'm reminded of Stella Young and how she had, "You get proud by practicing," tattooed on her inner arm in her own handwriting, to remind herself that the journey towards disability pride is long and hard, and you have to practice every single day. So today, as we lean into our collective queer crip power, our internalized ableism can get in the bin. And if your internalized ableism won't leave you, if you can't shake it off, take a deep breath and feel these words settle into the marrow of your bones. As the poet and disability advocate Laura Hershey says in all her crip wisdom, remember, you weren't the one who made you ashamed, but you are the one who can make you proud. Just practice. Practice until you get proud. And once you're proud, keep practicing so you won't forget. You get
Wow, thank you,
by
Jax.
practicing.
Oh, sorry,
Thank you
say
very much.
again. Once you're proud, keep practicing. Is that what you said at the end?
Yeah, I'll pop the poem in the chat, but it's called "You Get Proud by Practicing" by
I
Laura
love that.
Ashley. And I'll pop my email address in the chat too. I'm a bit of a nerd for all things LGBTQIA plus and disability. So if you'd like to read some extra things, have a conversation about this intersection, I'm more than happy for folks to reach out to me as well. But I'll pop some of that in the chat.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jax. It was such a powerful presentation. And your words honour the legacy of queer and disabled activists and remind us all of the strength, pride, and collective power we carry forward together. And that's because we have it. But as you said, we're strong and resilient because we've had to be. Speaking truth to power, that's so important. And from one whole and complex human being with human rights that deserve to be upheld and treated with dignity and respect to another, I say thank you. We now go to our next presentation from PWDA member Jenna Hope and her father, PWDA President Jeremy Hope. Jenna shares some of their experiences and thoughts on what it's like being a young person who is both queer and disabled. Jenna and Jeremy can't be with us in person today, but they've kindly sent a recorded message for us, which we'll play now.
I'm Jeremy. I'm a father and a person with a disability. And this is my daughter, Jenna. Jenna is 20. Jenna is autistic and at times experiences non-speaking, which means she communicates in a way that feels right for her, sometimes spoken, sometimes written, and sometimes quiet. Today, her words are the heart of this piece, because power comes from lived experience, and our stories are our power.
It means I experience the world differently in more than one way. I don't want to choose which part of me people accept. I'm disabled, I'm asexual, and I'm still a whole person. Pride feels quiet and strong. It's not about being loud, it's about not hiding. Pride means I don't have the strength to make other people comfortable. Being seen means people talk to me, not about me. It means they believe me when I describe who I am. It means my identity isn't debated. Taking up space means I don't apologize for existing. It means my silence still counts. It means I belong even if I'm different. I want a future where queer and disabled people don't have to explain themselves all the time, where safety isn't something we have to earn, where we are respected as we are.
And as Jenna's father, I've learnt that power doesn't always look like volume. Sometimes it looks like clarity. It looks like someone naming who they are without apology. It's important that disabled people tell their own stories, not filtered, not softened, not interpreted for comfort. Allyship in practice means listening without correcting, standing beside, not in front, building spaces where everyone can belong without hiding parts of themselves.
We're here, we're queer, we're disabled, and we are in focus.
Being Jenna's dad is one of the greatest privileges. When we do projects like this together, it brings back what truly matters: family, community, and the values we try to live every day. Jenna sees more than we sometimes realise. She watches how we treat people. She hears our conversations about fairness, about respect. She notices when we choose to do things the right way, even when it's difficult. Jenna is proudly queer, and I'm proud to stand beside her as her dad and her greatest and fiercest ally. That has meant at times needing to protect her from ignorance, to gently challenge misunderstanding, to stand up when others didn't fully understand or they didn't want to. Those moments have shaped me. They've reminded me that leadership isn't abstract. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to be themselves. It's about ensuring difference is met with respect and not resistance. These words we use in meetings, dignity, inclusion, opportunity, they carry weight because I've seen what happens when they're absent, and I've seen the quiet power of what happens when they're present. Being Jenna's dad has strengthened my resolve, not from fear, but from love. A belief that fairness matters, that community matters, that sometimes the most important leadership is simply standing beside someone and saying you belong. And if she ever asks what this work was about, I hope I can say it was about helping build a world where you'll never have to explain your worth, where you're respected, protected, and celebrated exactly as you are.
This is Margie speaking, and thank you, Jeremy and Jenna. We're now moving into our member panel, facilitated by Uncle Paul Constable Cowcott, where we'll hear directly from LGBTQIA plus people with disability about what it means to hold those identities and how they shape the way we move through the world. Uncle Paul is a proud gay Wiradjuri man from central New South Wales and polio survivor, now living on Gubbi Gubbi country on the Queensland Sunshine Coast. He's a passionate human rights advocate, winning a National Human Rights Award in 2019 for his work in rights advocacy. Uncle Paul has artworks in private collections, both nationally and internationally, and has completed a number of commissioned works for NGOs and government organisations and corporations, including the Australian Embassy in Geneva and the Queensland Treasury, and of course, the PWDA, as we saw earlier today. Uncle Paul has developed resources that utilise traditional Indigenous art style and storytelling to provide accessible information to First Nations people living with disability on human rights and the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disability. These resources also include information on accessing service supports under the NDIS and identifying culturally respectful and resilience models of support. Uncle Paul sits on a number of national boards and advisory groups, specifically around First Nations people with disability and Indigenous communities and the arts. He has utilised his artwork presentations on First Nations disability and the LGBTIQ plus community at the United Nations in Geneva and New York on a number of occasions. He also facilitates an art group for First Nations artists living with disability called Noonaron on the Queensland Sunshine Coast. And the group hold annual exhibitions and regularly donate works to community-based services. They've also participated in many local and international art exhibitions. Most recently in 2024 at the United Nations in New York and South Korea's Parliament House. Together, the panel today will explore the power of storytelling and leadership in driving change, and we'll discuss what must shift in our systems, communities, and culture for queer, disabled people to be fully included, valued, and, as Jeremy said, celebrated. Please welcome Uncle Paul.
Hi, Maggie. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. And Maggie, just want to point out, thinking of you during your sorry business as well, and for still showing great strength in coming today and supporting us in this amazing sort of storytelling. I'm just blown away. I'm just so thrilled to be part of all this, and just the stories and the support is actually quite moving. Look, I suppose I better do a descriptor of myself. I didn't do it before because I thought I'd wait until now. I am a proud Indigenous man, but I have fair skin, and that comes from my feisty little Irish mother and her side of the family. I'm got grey hair and a grey beard. I'm wearing a black T-shirt with deadly written across the front of it, which is an Indigenous term for just really good. And I'm in my studio, which is always a mess. And I think you can see there's possum skins and everything here at the moment. It's another project I'm working on. It's great to be here today. And I think this is such a great opportunity to celebrate the diversity within our communities. One thing I wanted to point out, things were still challenging. In Queensland here, Article 216 of the Criminal Code is still illegal for a person to have a sexual relationship with someone who has a disability, which they call impairment of the mind. So anyone with intellectual disability, neurodiverse, learning disability, it's still technically illegal for them to have a sexual relationship with someone who's not disabled. I don't think the law has been enforced for a very long time, but the fact that it still sits there is something that impacts on how society views our queer people with disabilities as sexual beings. So look, today's meeting, today's purpose of today's yarn is to centre the voices of LGBTQ plus sister girl and brother boy communities living with disability. It's to create a space for connection, recognition, and pride. And the queer mob with disability are sexy. And we're sexy people. And we have a rich diversity of stories in our queer disabled community, but no one story represents everyone. So both our panel members today, and including myself, face the challenges of living with disability and being members of the LGBTIQ plus community. So today they've kindly offered to share their stories with us. I haven't got all the bios, but I will give a bit of an intro. I have stalked them both on social media and Instagram, and I highly recommend, if you're not following them, please follow them. I love their sites, the posts, the information, the humour. It's just really uplifting to sit there and go through this. And so I'll sort of try and give them justice in their introductions from the information I know. So Shannon Milak. Shannon is a neurodivergent creative with a strong focus on advocacy, accessibility, and authentic storytelling. Shannon lives with multiple disability, and this has shaped her perspective and fuels her commitment to challenging ableism and creating inclusive spaces. Shannon uses her television, radio, and writing and community engagement to amplify all our voices. I'd like, Shannon, to introduce yourself. I just want to say that I love when you were down at the Summer Pride and you're holding one of my favourite signs that says, "I get horny too." And so I was just so stoked, and your speech and that was amazing for the inaugural event. So I'd like to just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
No worries. Thank you so much, Uncle Paul. Hi everyone, this is Shannon speaking. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, whose lands I'm speaking from today. I honour their deep connection to land, sea and sky, and I recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including our brother boys and sister girls here with us today. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I also want to acknowledge every person with disability in this space and every member of the LGBTQIA plus community. I see you and I am one of you. My name is Shannon. I use she, her pronouns. I am middle-aged, have a medium complexion, long dark brown hair that I'm wearing down. I have 3 sleeper earrings in each ear, a labret piercing below my bottom lip, and I'm wearing a black Metallica t-shirt, black glasses, and purple eyeshadow and lipstick. I'm a disability advocate and activist. And I say activist because I'm not afraid to take space, make myself heard, and demand real action for queer and disabled people. I know what it feels like to make myself smaller so other people feel comfortable, so I won't do that here. I proudly identify as a non-binary woman with an androgen core, as well as abrosexual, queer, and heteroflexible. I'm also physically disabled, multiple back and knee injuries, arthritis, carpal tunnel, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, PCOS, and several other chronic conditions that all feed into the chronic pain I live with every day. I'm autistic, ADHD, OCD, and a survivor of physical and sexual abuse. Whilst I'm frequently seen with using a walking stick or sometimes a walking frame, I don't use them every day. And because of this, my disability is often dismissed when not visible. If you've ever felt that way too, I want you to know that you are seen, your experience is valid, and our community, your community, will work to ensure you're never ignored or undervalued. So thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm so honoured and privileged to share space with you and get to meet you and know you better. I love your voice and thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And our next speaker or panelist or friend is Dane. Dane Noonan. Dane, I've stalked you as well. Look, Dane lives with disability and he's also a member of the LGBTIQ plus sister girl brother boy community. Dane is also a support worker, which I think is so important. We need more of our own mob providing supports to our community. Dane is a huge advocate for his local community on the New South Wales South Coast, and Dane is an actor with numerous TV and film work to his credit. He does a lot of work with Bus Stop, which is a disabled-led production and film company. I've done some work with them. They're amazing people. And Dane was recently interviewed by DNA magazine, the November issue. And it was a great photo too, great photo shoot. I didn't get to read the article because
a little saucy.
And you're also starring at the moment in the series Time Bandits on Apple TV.
That was actually, it was launched about 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
On Apple, yeah. But I have a little project coming up quite soon on Netflix. Which has been really exciting and a fun experience. But yeah.
So that's great. I'll be able to keep in touch with that now that we're following each other on Instagram and keep in touch. So Dan, would you like to just introduce yourself as well and tell us a bit about yourself?
Of course. Firstly, I just want to say that I am incredibly honored to be sharing space with everyone here, regardless who you are, who you're existing as in this world. I'm Dane Noonan. I am a proud gay man and I live with a disability. My pronouns are he, him. I'm standing on a Lowry land, which means a pleasant place near the sea. I'm a PWDA member, of course. An image description of me, I'm wearing probably say grandpa glasses with spiky hair. I've got a floral shirt with mixed colours of yellow, purple, and my favourite colour, pink. I am an actor. I've been in the industry for just over a decade now, I would say. And my mission, not only as an artist, but a person who is queer and disabled, is to encourage disabled people like us to find their voice. This world can be harsh, but stand in your power and keep being yourself is what I really preach. I'm a support worker. My role is disability employment advocate. So I teach life-based skills for people with disability, to enter the workforce. So I teach advocacy, communication, all kind of forms of education, which I absolutely love. I really have a strong connection and passion to the work that I do. Um, just kind of a bit of context for my disability. I have a really rare genetic condition called Marito-Lammy syndrome. It's about 20 letters long. Don't ask me how to spell it. Um, but essentially, my parents both had faulty genes. And that's just, yeah, luck of the draw. My body doesn't break down carbohydrates properly. Not that that really stops me from having a cheeky Happy Meal every now and then. But yeah, it's a very rare condition that affects all of my body. I've got clouding of the cornea, an enlarged liver and spleen. I've got spinal compression. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change a thing about myself. I've fully accepted who I am as a person existing. And I've got a little quote as well. And I'll try not to get emotional over saying it, but it's really resonated with me for 30 years of living is you are seen and you are deeply loved. I think we all deserve love in this world. And yeah, I just wanted to say that. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Jane, for sharing that. And yes, I think it's really powerful that we are loved, and that's why these groups are coming together is so powerful to remind us of that and to find our tribe and who we can hang out with and trust. And look, not to minimise your condition, but I have trouble looking after breaking down carbohydrates as well. But they just store in my stomach, and I've got quite a lot of supply there. So.
There you go.
So let's get to our first question, because as much as I would love to just sit here and have a yarn with you both, and I think you have so much to share, let's get to question one, and might put it to you, Shannon, first, is what does being both queer and disabled mean to you, and how do these identities shape how you move through the world? Just all sort of answered those, but maybe pin it down to this particular question. So you first, Shannon.
Sure. So again, this is Shannon speaking. It's an important question because both identities make up who I am. I don't compartmentalize them any more than I do my cultural identity or anything else. I show up as all of me all of the time. So I may highlight a particular aspect of my identity when contextually appropriate, like when I'm advocating for a particular identity or cause, but I always try and bring an intersectional lens. Disabled people are marginalized. And I think it's important to, remember that queer people are also marginalized still to this day. And when we are both, where our discrimination and barriers to inclusion are even greater. Our stories are often silenced. People are frequently uncomfortable with us because we make them face their ableism and bigotry, which is often the source of our exclusion. It's easier to ignore us than to address their shortfalls and actively change how they accommodate and include us in a meaningful way. But I continue to show up as me, loudly, unapologetically, and authentically. If I make them uncomfortable, good. It means I hit a nerve. The more they dismiss us, the louder I get, and our interactions leave a mark. They play in their minds long after our conversations end. And so my hope is that we will challenge their perspective enough so that each encounter they have with us will encourage them to acknowledge their biases and shift their perspective. I would show up authentically regardless of being queer or disabled. However, these identities sort of impact how I physically show up and shape how I present myself to the world more broadly.
That's fantastic. I love that you just show up, all of you, all of the time. That's so true. And little things too. My dad used to say to me, being a fair-skinned black fella, he said, "You're designed to go in by stealth." He said, "They don't know you're there till it's too late." And I think that's sometimes, all those other parts of us as well go in. I've had religious groups turn up at the door to ask me what I thought about Mardi Gras, and surely a bloke like yourself must oppose all that. And I always loved that. Well, let's have a conversation about this. So thanks, Shannon. That's great. Dane.
Yes.
Brother, what does being both queer and disabled mean to you, and how do you deal with these identities? How having these identities shape you moving through the world?
A big thing for me has been visibility, being seen, being heard. And you know what? We should all be celebrated at the end of the day, whoever we are, in this world. I, well, all of us should feel that we can walk freely. We can exist fully like as ourselves, and we're given equal opportunities like anyone else as well. From my personal experience, I'm living in a world it's not built for me being short-statured. I'm only 4 foot tall, but I will say that it has positively challenged my resilience in ways that I didn't expect. And it's kind of given me a real different perspective on how to see life in general. I think for me as well, you know, I'm navigating multiple communities, whether that's a disabled community, LGBTQ, society in general, all those types of things. Um, and just, you know, some experience from me personally. Um, I mentioned it before, we all want to feel loved. We deserve that. And something that's really kind of carried through my life. Um, as a short-statured person and trying to find love is, you know, not being seen as a fetish because I'm short-statured. I understand people's curiosities and things like that, but not being seen as a fetish. Um, it's been mentioned before, a sexual being. I am a sexual being. I have desires and wants like everyone else. And also, you know, finding love I was seen as someone that, oh, am I going to have to be that person's full-time carer and things like that. But on the flip side, it's really challenged me personally to self-advocate for myself, stand up for myself. And you know, if people are curious, that's okay to ask, but it's obviously got to be done in a respectful manner, and things like that. I also feel that obviously I have a really unique way of life, and being disabled and queer with all my kind of life hurdles and things like that, I use that in a form of comedy, which was mentioned. I make comedy skits because, you know, you hear that saying, if you don't, what is it? If you don't laugh, you'll cry. It's something like that. And I kind of build my life around making comedy skits, which as well kind of show people that this is my life and it's done in a comedic way, to show you what my life is. But yeah, it kind of sparks creativity. So yeah.
And I think too, Dan, the videos you make are very funny. You're very clever with what you do, and I think it sort of fights. It sort of goes again. I was trying to stop that attitude of being double broken, that
Mm,
we're sad people. But yeah,
absolutely.
and I think we have comedy, and we can say this. Look, we have a sense of humour. We can laugh at ourselves. We can laugh at the world. You know, we're not broken. We're artistic. We can be creative, and all that sort of thing. And I think too, like turning up and being your authentic self, um, is like I sort of come out like I'm pretty old. I came out, you know, back in the 70s sort of stuff. And where like I was around before the first Mardi Gras march, so like sort of a bit of a fossil. But I remember with Mardi Gras where they wouldn't show bears. If you had a hairy chest and a beard,
Oh my
you didn't
goodness.
fit with the stereotype of what they thought the gay community looked like. So then being someone with a disability as well, it's like,
Yeah,
where do you fit in? Why do I even exist? So I think, you know, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And I think that visibility to see us, people with disabilities, as being sexual beings, having a sense of humour, and not being pedophiles, like not having people turned on them. To me, that's just as superficial as you want to go out with blondes or something.
yeah,
Like you want to go something because of their physical appearance, not
yeah,
who they are. And I was very lucky when I found the bears with my disability. It was a sort of very accepting community. And my husband, who's an amazing man, and we've been together 29 years. So so there is someone out there. I didn't find him until I was in my late 30s. So yeah, so there's people out there. Hang in there, and people love you. And but I just want to add to that question. I'm very conscious of the time, but I'm terrible. I have no concept of time. I think that's just a black belt thing. But I'm just wondering. Now, Shannon, you said you turn up all the time as your authentic self. Everything, they're out there loud and proud. And if you're uncomfortable, deal with it. It's your problem, not mine. I love that. But I'm just wondering, are there any, like, how visible and invisible are there parts that you feel different in different circumstances? Like, are there parts you're not comfortable with depending on the circumstances? And how do you sort of sometimes navigate that? So, Shannon, maybe back to you first up.
Look, I think Dane actually hit the nail on the head with something for me, because something I've been really passionate about lately is sort of bringing this intersectional lens between disabled people and sexuality. And I don't just mean as far as gender identity goes, or, you know, whether you're queer or heteronormative. My whole thing is we are fetishized. You know, I mean, I don't kink shame by any means. And that is something that I actually often talk about. I was always uncomfortable talking about sex and pleasure and all of these sort of things because people were fundamentally unaccepting of disabled people being sexual beings. And I just got to a point where I went, why? Why am I doing this? So instead of being the quietest one in the room, I became the loudest one in the room. I started talking about sex and pleasure and alternative relationship styles and the kink community and all of these sort of things. You know, I started engaging more with sex workers and people who are willing to work with people with disabilities and making sure that brothels were accessible and really having these conversations that no one else is having, you know, at the time. Something that I've been really trying to advocate for, particularly with disability organisations, is talking specifically about alternative relationship structures. So, you know, ethical non-monogamy and polyamory and things like that. Because in these communities and also in the kink communities, you find a lot of disabled and neurodivergent people. And yet these are not actually spoken about within these disability organisations, which I find absolutely frustrating because they're kind of finding their own way there, but people aren't guided to communities that are going to accept them and perhaps actually embrace the sort of lifestyle and relationship styles that are more conducive to their way of loving. So I think it's really important to start broadening these conversations, stop being so monocentric about how we look at things, whether it's right for you, whether it's wrong for you, or anything in between. The conversation still needs to be had because it's about providing people with enough information to make an informed decision for themselves. Because as disabled people, we do have capacity to be self-determined and actually make these decisions for ourselves. No one should be deciding what sort of relationship structure we should be involved in or what kind of sex we want to enjoy. We should be making those decisions for ourselves.
Totally. And there's still that attitude, isn't there, in the industry about people with disabilities, the eternal child, or not being sexual. You know, I remember getting into trouble. I worked for a big disability organisation and I arranged a sex worker for a young man with cerebral palsy. And I thought they were incredibly professional and they were going to come out to the house and we would support him being in a comfortable position and they were going to, you know, do whatever they were going to do to, you know, it's none of our business, but once that get closed. And I got dragged over the coals for that. So when you start talking about sex apart from just heterosexual sort of sex, they even freak out even more. What a service. Yeah. So he's having this conversation that people are very diverse, people with disabilities.
And we need to be safe, right?
Absolutely.
So this is the thing, it's a safety element, is if we're not actually directing people to safe establishments or, you know, to engage with safe workers, you know, at the end of the day, they could go off uninformed and actually put themselves at greater risk of sexual abuse and things like that, which we know is more prevalent in the disability community. So I think we need to destigmatize that and actually talk about the fact that, you know, there are some sex workers, for example, that are quite happy to have a support worker stay in the room to ensure safety and ensure the communication is kept clear and that the communication style is actually going to, you know, ensure that what needs to happen happens. So I think the safety element is something that's overlooked, and yet it's so important to ensure that our community is kept safe. And if we keep making it a taboo subject, we're never going to be safe.
Absolutely, totally agreed. Yeah. So now, Dane, what about you? Are there any parts of you, depending on the environment or where you are, that you keep invisible or make visible or augment or feel can be louder about things, or things you just sort of, I know we have the capability sometimes to just sort of make ourselves almost disappear sometimes and blend into a room and not make waves. Well, I'm just interested, Dane, how do you feel about these sort of things?
From my experience, from an early age, because I've had to learn dealing with being, obviously a gay man and a disabled person, I've had to grow up quickly. So I've always kind of uh, had the strong ability to believe in myself, and I'm surrounded, you know, luckily by a supportive family and things like that. So I think for me is definitely constantly having the conversations, because people are scared of having them, but it's the only way to move forward is having the discussions. I probably should have mentioned it before, but there is love out there for everyone. My fiance is 6'2", and I have a giant bunny that's half my size. So anything is possible. But as I say, whether that's, we enter the school spaces and well, particularly people that haven't necessarily been around someone with a disability or is queer. Education is the biggest form of positive change. And I think, staying proud and speaking up, using our voices, what we are doing now, is the key to getting to that next stage. So, yeah, for everyone here, keep doing it.
Yeah.
My stronger
Fantastic.
is definitely.
No, look, fantastic. Both incredible insight. And so as I think it's so good to hear that you're out there doing that. And I think one thing is your storytelling, the pair of you, what you do in your story. So I'm thinking the role of storytelling and leadership by queer mob living with disabilities, such as yourselves, is driving the change. And that change is slowly happening. But when you imagine a future where queer and disabled people are fully included, valued, what does that look like? And what do we need to be doing now to get there? Go back to Shannon again. First up.
No worries. Okay, again, Shannon speaking. What needs to change? I suppose are two things. First, we as a community need to be willing to fight and be heard. No, we absolutely should not have to, but the reality is we must. And we need to be seen, heard, and counted. Rights and inclusion are won through grit and sheer determination. And we need only look at, our First Nations people to see that. Like them, we should not have to fight for our right to exist and to be treated with dignity and equity, but we must. So we also need the determination to push through setbacks, to keep fighting after each small win, because significant systemic change requires significant effort. The fight is unlikely to be over in our lifetime. And I don't say that to be deflationary. I'm actually quite optimistic, but it is the truth. And I think the second thing is that allies need to step up and fight alongside us. Solidarity is key. We cannot win this alone. We need allies to call out every ableist and bigoted comment. We need them to support our advocacy by providing the backing we need to speak for ourselves. And we need them to use their voice, independent of us, to fight for our inclusion, acceptance, and our access needs. It's far easier to ignore a marginalised community than it is to ignore thousands or even millions standing alongside them. Together, we can make real, lasting, meaningful change, but only if we make others care enough to stand in solidarity and fight with us. We will be fully included and valued, and we will slowly see the changes we need. But to get there, we need to fight, and we need to be ready, and get prepared the next generation to take our place when we can no longer carry the baton. I think storytelling is really effective in showing people who we are as people and not just, a name on a page or another statistic. So when we actually share personal details about ourselves, that means being vulnerable. It means showing up and wearing our heart on our sleeve. If we can't bring them on the journey with us, they're never going to care about us because we're othered. We're not something they can relate to. I mean, you think about a movie or a song, and the ones that you connect with most are the ones where the character takes you on a journey. And this is no different in advocacy. We need to not only tell people who we are, but we need to paint them a picture. Let them actually understand what it is that we're doing, walk through our day to day, and let it resonate for them. Let them actually feel what we're feeling. When we connect on that level, they then want to take action, not because they're obligated to, but because they actually genuinely want to see that change happen with us. So I think it's really powerful to use storytelling and to center yourself. Yes, I know there's a lot of online culture saying, I'm the main character, but you do need to make yourself the main character when you're a marginalized member of society. Because otherwise we're othered and we're pushed to the shadows, and we shouldn't be. So we need to show up. We need to express who we are. We need to bring people along on that journey and let them stand a moment in our shoes, so to speak, so that they can greater understand what it is that we're facing and what we're actually wanting to achieve. Show them that we're just like them. We just walk through the world a little differently, or roll through the world a little differently.
Thanks, Shannon. That's very powerful. So,
So
and
well said. Sorry to interrupt. That is so well said.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess storytelling and leadership for me, as a queer person and a disabled person, um, creating real and like authentic stories from us and who we are. Um, I guess we're giving society the full story at the end of the day. It's not told for us. We're sharing our lived experience, and that we are capable, and all of these things that, society, we can, I guess, do anything that we put our mind to at the end of the day. Um, Disability, in my experience, often has been seen as pity or one-dimensional. Me as a person is one-dimensional. People make assumptions about me, oh, look, he would only be able to do X, Y, Z. He wouldn't be able to do those other things, which at the end of the day, it's equal opportunity. Give us a chance to do it. And we'll show you that we can. There may be supports that need to be put in place, but I know at the end of the day that I put my mind to anything that I do, and I can do it. Um, we show that our lives are like anyone else. Was mentioned before, we're complex human beings. We're deeply human as well. And I think it's really important that younger generations, to come, it shows them the possibility, that they don't have to hide, and they can be who they are because, they're leading, the next world to come. So yeah.
that is so true that they don't need to hide. Yeah, and I think the thing is too, what I'm getting is that we need to drive the conversation, not be the topic of conversation. And my concern too is that I think we have to get stronger, because with the rise of this far right nationalist Christian sort of movements that are happening in that as well, I really feel that members of our trans community and our brother, boy, and sister girl community are experiencing the level of discrimination that just being gay experienced back in the 60s and the 70s and 80s. And so I think we really have to come together and support all members of our community, however they identify. So, look, that's about it. But look, thank you so very, very much. I am thrilled that I got to facilitate this and to meet you both. And I really would like to keep in touch. And I would love to sit down and have a coffee with you both one day, or a drink or whatever, and just let's solve the problems of the world, because I find the conversation's fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing. It takes a lot to put yourself out there and to talk about that, and you two do it on a daily basis for our community. So thank you very much, and thanks to PWD for being so diverse and respectful and bringing people together.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much as well, Uncle Paul, for for that lovely sentiment. I'd love to have a coffee with you someday. Also, thank you to Dane and to PWDA, and also to everyone who's tuned in today. I'm happy to have conversations outside of this forum. I will throw a link into the chat. Feel free to follow me and send me a message if you like.
Just beautiful to meet you all. Keep shining.
Thank you, Uncle Paul, and thank you, Shannon and Dane. What a great panel. Some really interesting and thought-provoking ideas in there, and got so much out of it. Look, today we've spent a wonderful couple of hours together, and we've been focusing on the value of our lived experiences within the intersection of queer and disabled communities. We shone a light on the additional barriers, discrimination, and exclusion that many of us experience, and also the resources we need to meet the needs we have. Believe us, designed for intersection, economic security is inclusion, fund peer leadership, and that visibility must lead to power. So let's take the time to reflect on the difference we can each make by choosing where we place our focus and how we share our stories. Because when we bring things into focus, it all becomes clear. Clear about what must be done, clear about what our choices are in making things happen, and clear about being in our power, being in our strength, our resilience, and our double uniqueness. And knowing that we can continue by standing in that strength and power to bring queer and disabled needs in focus. It's been an incredible couple of hours. I hope you agree. And before we go, I'd like to acknowledge that all the speakers here today are people with disability and PWDA members. I'd like to extend that thanks to everyone who has participated today, either as a speaker, a moderator, or in the audience. And the discussion has been insightful and motivating. It's now up to us to continue to work together, advocating for and leading the way in creating the inclusive society we deserve. The one where LGBTQIA plus people with disabilities rights are upheld and we are recognised, respected and celebrated with pride. Remember, PWDA is led by and for our members, and it's really important that that we come together as community. And we have today. We've come out in force and making sure that our voices are heard. If you're a person with disability, I'd like to invite you to become a member of PWDA and be part of the work promoting the human rights, equality and dignity of all people with disability. While I'm not a staff member, I'm a proud PWDA member and know how deep the connection between members' voices and PWDA's work is. I think I joined at this very event last year. Membership is free and gets you access to all our events. The PWDA team are posting a link to the membership form in the chat below. Thank you once again. A recording of this event will be sent out to all the people who registered and will be published on the PWDA website and also social media if you'd like to watch it again. Thank you again for coming today and happy Pride. Goodbye.
Yes, me.